Welcome, everyone, to episode 9 of the Abject Emirs podcast. Um, it's been a bit. We had a couple weeks off. We're going to have a conversation with a writer and a costume designer. Uh, so Esmari's going to talk to us about some of her experiences. Like I said, I like to talk to different kinds of artists because I like to learn things that I don't know about their fields. And because you never know who might stumble across one of these and learn something out of it. So right now, as usual, my QR code's up there on the podcast audio version. It'll be in a link in the comments or a link on the show description. If you get anything of value out of here, you're welcome to go check it out. Uh, Join all the things, like all the things during the episode. Esmeri's website will be up there. I believe she's got links to some other stuff up there too. So, we like to support the artists that we're talking to as much as we can. So, a reminder: this is a fairly new podcast. None of the conversations will be edited after they happen. Um, my son is calling me right now. So anyway, we keep all mistakes and issues and any in keeping with the theme of the episode about learning from our failures and mistakes. I keep all those episodes up for posterity to show how much better I've gotten at this as we go along. And with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and roll the intro and we'll get started. Okay, welcome, Esmari. So
Hi.
the first thing I like to do is just introduce yourself as much or as little as you want. And for multiple artists, if you want to talk about, like for you, maybe the costume design, talk about, how that came about, how you got into that, what inspired you for that, what happened with that, what's going on with that, and then where you're at now with writing. And then if you have specific experiences that inspired you, I like to hear those first before we get into we all start at those positive, I
Yeah,
really love this thing and I want to do this thing. So before we get
exactly.
into you know, the dirt, I like to talk about the honeymoon.
Sure.
So, if go ahead.
Sure. So yeah, I was always sort of an artsy fartsy kid. I started doing theater when I think I was in middle school. And then, I was like founding member of the drama club in high school and all of that fun stuff. And I did everything acting and, just like all those things. And then I realized, I think while I was probably still in high school, but then maybe like partially during undergrad, that I really preferred being backstage. Um, I figured out that I could sew, which is a thing that most people didn't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so that just sort of, well, the other thing that I totally didn't think of it in these terms at the time. I didn't really have the language or understanding for how to like think of this until like 5 or 6 years ago. But I have really, really strong spatial relation skills. So, like, I grew up in
Mm-hmm.
Indiana. We took the I-STEP test in middle school. We took, placement tests to figure out like what kinds of classes we should take. And I scored, off the charts in spatial relations, which basically just means that like if you give me, picture of a three-dimensional object and you ask me what the backside look like, I can tell you what the backside looks like. Like I can
Yeah.
take things apart in my head and turn them around and stuff like that. But the reason that that's important is because it got me into drafting classes, which is
Okay.
something that I never would have done because it wasn't drawing, it wasn't art, it was technical.
Yep.
But I ended up through the course of my undergrad degree deciding, to be a costume designer. And one of the things that costume designers have to understand is how clothes are made. And
Hmm.
so a large part of my education and when going on and getting my Master of Fine Arts degree in costume design was learning to be a pattern maker, which was drafting.
Yeah.
And so like all of the stuff that just I was interested in and could sort of naturally do well, sort of it just all played together and meant that I could keep working in theater and doing theater and not necessarily being on stage and acting, which is not, I'm an introvert and
Yeah.
and I was much much shyer than I'm not as shy now, but I used to be painfully shy, and
Yep.
so like the whole idea of being on stage was like it was invigorating, but also like completely exhausting and stressful. So yeah, I was able to contribute as a costume designer, and that was really great. I ended up getting my theater degree in undergrad, and then I got my Master of Fine Arts degree in costume design. And I had moved to the East Coast um, to take a job at the University of Delaware,
Hmm.
and I hated it. I hated,
Hmm.
which was weird because like I loved DC, I
Yep.
liked New York, everything was cool, but like there was just something about Delaware that I was like, I don't like it here. And
Yeah.
part of it was probably just that I was isolated and like there wasn't a whole lot to do outside of work.
Yeah.
And my mom's cancer had recurred, and so I decided to move home. And I ended up working for one of the regional theaters here in this area and did that professionally for, see, I think I worked there for like 5 or 6 seasons and then got downsized and ended up doing freelance work.
Hmm.
And that was extremely stressful. Like, just the first year was fun and exciting because like I had plenty of work. I
Hmm.
had lots of people, wanting to work with me. Everything was great. And then like the second year was still fun, but not as exciting. It was starting to like turn into grueling. And then like the third year was just completely awful and I hated it.
Yep.
And I just wanted that security of like having a job again.
Yeah.
Which is just something that people in theater don't. I like the fact that I had a job 9 months out of 12 and I had health insurance and all of that stuff that goes with it. Like that's
Yeah.
weird in theater. Like you really, as well, if I had belonged to a union, it wouldn't have been weird because I could have gotten all that stuff through the union. But the regional theater that I worked at wasn't unionized. And so,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's just, there was a lot of, lack of security.
Hmm.
And like I said, I got downsized. So it's not even like getting fired or anything like that. It's just the end of the season comes and they don't renew a contract. And like so there's no guarantee going forward. There's no like um if they decide to end your contract early, they have to abide by labor laws and do HR things and all that stuff. But like it's a contract business.
Yeah.
So like all they have to do is just not renew your contract. And there was just like a whole lot of political drama going on with that whole situation. And I was like, fine, I'd rather, just do freelance anyway.
Yeah.
And it just, I never got to the point in it where I could just do the work and enjoy life. It was,
Yep.
it was constant. I was working like 70, 80 hours a week, just all the time. And
And that
it's not sustainable.
and it's hard when it's something you love, and
Yes,
you start
exactly.
you start to get burnout on something that you love, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels worse, I think, than getting
Yes.
burnout on a job that you're doing just for livelihood. Getting
Right.
burnout on something you love is terrible. It's a terrible feeling.
Yes. Like I still, you were asking like where am I at with it now? I literally I have a hard time just like doing minor alterations on my own clothes,
Yep.
minor repairs and alter. Like I can't. I'm so burned out and so
Yep.
over it that like I literally just don't sew for myself anymore. I don't do costume stuff anymore. I don't dress up for Halloween anymore or anything like that. I just there it really sucked all of the joy out of it for me. And
Yeah.
that's the
That's
hardest part.
that's
It really
terrible.
is. But the good thing is that, you know, as I transitioned out of that job and I got a temp job to like make ends meet and all this stuff. And um, one of the things that I had wanted to do this whole time that I had been working in theater, um, as soon as I heard about NaNoWriMo, I wanted to do NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
And because I used to write when I was in high school, I wrote,
Hmm.
a lot when I was in undergrad. But I had kind of gotten to the point where like the only time I ever wrote anything was like poetry, and that was just like word vomit, like get the feelings
Yeah.
on the page to like process stuff, kinds of things. And so it was bad poetry and all that stuff. Um,
I tried it in
so
college. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I had to try it in college.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody has to write their like emotional vomit poetry that no one else should ever read.
What is
But
springtime?
yeah,
I don't have words for that.
it's a way to, process the crap.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so then one of the very last show that I did was in October of 2014, and the prop designer was sitting next to me in the theater while we were, waiting for technicians to do something on the stage. And she was like, I don't understand. Like, what are you going to do with all of this like free time that you're going to have? And I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to like enjoy life. I don't. And then I was like, I mean, I could play the piano. I could, read books. I was like, I could write books. I could,
Yeah.
oh my God, I can do NaNoWriMo this year.
Yeah.
And so it was like it was this really huge relief that like something that I had been wanting to do and that this career decision was keeping me from doing, I was finally going to get a chance to do that. And I failed miserably my first
Yeah.
nano. Like I wrote, I don't know, probably like 3,000 words the entire month. And
Yeah.
for those who don't know NaNoWriMo, the point is to write a 50,000 word novel
At
in the month
least.
of
Yeah.
November.
Yep.
And but I always had a show. I had like a giant show opening at the beginning of December every year. So there was no way I could ever take the time to do that.
Hmm.
And so that year I did, failed miserably.
Hmm.
but it got me in the habit of sitting down and trying to write. And so, a few weeks into December, I got this like random inspiration and I went home and wrote, I think it was like 150,000 words in 2 weeks or something like that. Like
Yeah.
I was
Wow.
broke.
Wow.
I had nothing else to do. It was
Yeah.
winter. It was cold as hell outside.
Yeah.
And so I would go to work and I would do my job and then I'd come home and I would write a whole lot. And
That is a train ride of words right there. That's a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, it was all garbage. But but it primed, the pump got
Yep.
flowing and yeah,
I
so
I
that's
think that's where writers discover themselves because sometimes it happens early. Like with me, it happened early when I was a little kid. Happened really really early, but I sometimes it happens different places. I think somebody sits down and
mhm.
they'll say, "I have an idea for a book. I'm going to write a book." They'll sit down, they'll write a book, and then they'll just go, "This is hard and dumb. I don't like it." Or it becomes like something inside of you
Mm.
goes, "I could do this all day,
Yeah.
every day," and it becomes just the act of doing it and having something to say that feels like it is important, even if it's only to
Yeah.
you. And I think that's where that because everybody has a book in them. I think everybody has a book in them,
Yeah,
but
I think so too, but
not everybody has the writer in them.
yeah, I think that it takes a lot of discipline and it also takes a lot of willingness to take feedback and like understanding that like being able to look back on those, ridiculous amount of words that I wrote in 2015 and recognize that they're all garbage,
Yep.
and that like there's maybe some story bits that I can take out and use later,
Hmm.
but like for the most part, it was garbage. And
It's a lot of accountability too, because you have
yeah,
to be able to say this is what I'm willing to do, and then you
hmm,
also have to be able to be able to do that. You have to be able to
yeah,
look at something and go, all of this is trash, or some of
yeah,
this is trash,
yeah.
and I know a lot of writers that I talk to that hate the revision process, and I absolutely love the revision process
Oh
because
yeah, yeah,
if I finish the story, I got the basic bones of the story. The revision process gives me so much more discovery because I have the big things that I really like, the big things that are the main core parts of the story, but I have all this filler that's just there. And
yeah,
as the more I go through it, the more I those start turning into things, and it's like finding new little stories inside of the big story. And I love that because it keeps
yeah,
me. I try to look at it less like I just need to rewrite stuff. I rewrite when I do it. I take my previous draft
mm,
and I move it, and then I do a blank page and I rewrite everything, including the stuff that I'm keeping. And it
yeah,
takes me forever, but I find new things instead of just copying and pasting stuff that I actually find new things that way. So,
yeah. Well, one of the to that point, one of the things that I realized when I was about halfway through this like writing journey, I had been writing in third person past tense, and
mhm,
I came to realize that like what I really liked to read was first person present. And so I like tried writing in first person present, and like I really liked it. And
mhm,
so like I had to like convert all of this other stuff. And so it was very much like it was almost, basically rewriting it from scratch because like it changes everything.
that's
It totally
fantastic.
changes like the inner monologue
Hmm.
because it's the character's inner monologue and not
Hmm.
a narrator and things like that. So yeah.
That's
But
hard too. I have many times,
mm,
get a few drafts into something and go, I think this would be better out of the third person, and then it's hard. So I
it's
go back,
really hard.
and it is hard to do, and I commend you for that because I hate it.
Well, and I mean, it definitely is. It's not the easiest way to go about things because, like, then like when you have a multi point of view book, you have to have like very different voices as
Hmm.
the narration and everything. So it's been challenging, but I've learned a lot. But but yeah, I mean, I think that when I first started writing, it was really hard. Like one of the things that I liked about it, theater is like the most collaborative art that there is.
Hmm.
And then writing is the least collaborative art
Yep. Yeah.
in a lot of ways. Um, and so like kind of felt funny that like I was like, you know, no more people. I don't want. But then like as I got into like looking into getting critique partners and beta
Yep.
readers and all that stuff, like it has become more collaborative. And now I have, a core group of people that I go to for feedback and stuff. But like, yeah, at first, like the simple fact that it was something that I could do in my house by myself without talking to anybody, any other humans, I was like, two thumbs up. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
I do it anywhere. I when I was a kid, I had an old typewriter and it made a
Mm,
bunch of noise and it was a mess. And I hand wrote, and I'm very much, um, I try new technologies all the
mm,
time. I've been using Scriveners probably since 2009, but every
yeah.
now and then I see something shiny and I go try it. But um, there's a, I was just looking at a, a, it's like a collaborative, it's called Beta Reader, something. It's a website that I'm kind of looking into
Mhm.
where you can actually put your work there, and then you can invite beta readers in and they can do inline comments, and
Oh,
instead of having to pass like documents around and do
yeah.
proofreading, and because different people have different things, and
Yeah, or like
I'm
Critique Circle and Scribophile where you have to have karma or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm trying to look, as I haven't I used to do beta reads a lot,
Mm.
But I've been working on this novel for almost 8 years now, so I haven't had anything because I used to mostly write short stories, but this is my fifth novel,
Mm.
and um, there's been like three novellas. I think it's been a long time, but I've been working on this for like 8 years, and I've kept it like really close, and
Mm.
so it's been a long time. Like none of my beta readers I haven't talked to in years
Mm.
because they were friends, and it's nice to be able to have a way to say because you get kind of paranoid.
Oh yeah.
I've had things from when I used to do beta readers in the Facebook group, and I've
Yeah.
had I've had writing show up on Reddit before,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it sucks. And
Yeah.
I had you report it and you have to prove that you had it first, and but
Yeah.
so you get paranoid. It's nice to have the technology to be able to say here are people who aren't biased to me because they're my friends and family, but
Right.
are also in this because they actually want to be a part of this. So
Yeah, one of the best things that well, so I found Scribophile and Critique Circle first, so those were really great for like getting some more objective feedback, people who weren't my personal friends and family and things
hmm
like that. But then I found the Uber group, which is they focus a lot more on developmental editing, and
yeah,
so like it's been really great because like a there's accountability there because like if somebody steals somebody else's work, they're out of the group, and
yeah.
then everybody can vouch for one another and things like that. So
Now
it's
the AI is stealing our stuff. So
yeah, oh god, don't even get me started on that.
you're a sci-fi writer, right? I I
Yes.
follow I
Yes.
follow Neil Clark that publishes Clark's World magazine
Oh yeah, yeah.
on a lot of stuff. He keeps having to shut his submissions down because he's getting
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of AI submissions like a week.
Yeah, I saw that. And
It's
it's so
insane.
sad
Yeah,
because like I like how do you fix that? How do you stop it from happening? And
yeah,
because clearly our little "I'm not a robot" thing doesn't work anymore.
yeah, yeah. Capture codes make it harder for us than they do anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Okay, so um, one thing you did mention is you were talking about theater anxiety before
mm,
you started moving backstage.
mhm.
And I have a major anxiety disorder, and this is I had 2 weeks off because this became a lot,
Yeah.
and but it's also like helped me. Like this is
Mhm,
my oh my gosh, this is actually helping me communicate better. But
mhm.
um, I could have never. I didn't start learning how to deal with my anxiety until I was an adult, but I've had it since I was a small child.
Right. Yeah.
My daughter inherited it, and she's going to high school next year, but she's going into advanced theater because she's already done theater previously in middle school,
Mhm.
and her older brother's graduating high school with theater chops and having been in stage plays and stuff, and she's already like learned how to, you know, deal with things at an early age in a way that I never could have hoped to. So
Right. Yeah.
I see that like theater is something that I couldn't have ever done, and but I can see how I did theater one time. I told her once when I was in ninth grade, I went to my first day of theater class. They asked me to stand up in front of the class and you know say something on a paper, and I noped. I was like, I can't do that. I'm done. I'm leaving. I hated
Yeah.
it. And I think that it's like we were talking about you sit down, you start writing, and it's either not your thing or it becomes something you love.
Mhm.
And I think she just went the other way with that. And it made an enormous impact on how she's able to handle things. She's much more outgoing than I ever would have been. And
I do think that like I said, I was a really shy kid, and
mm-hmm,
so like you would think that I wouldn't be able to get up on stage and do things, but like there was something about performing because I sang and I played piano and like
mm-hmm,
I was one of those kids that like if you gave me an instrument for 5 minutes, I could figure out how to play Happy Birthday on it.
mm-hmm,
Like like I have always been, just very musical, and so like performance there was something about doing that that wasn't the same as just like trying to talk to other people. Because like if it was just me trying to talk, oh, forget that. Like I would like completely panic and, get all shy. But it's not my words, it's not my music, it's just it's something that I can do. It's like being able to do a trick.
Yeah.
And so, it was a good way to get it was a way to get positive attention, which was something that I lacked in my life,
Yeah.
just like normally. Um, so yeah,
And it's all outlets. It's all
yeah,
you just.
yeah,
I think like I've tried to, some of us we try other things. I can do this, then I can do that, and I can do
mm-hmm,
that, and um, most of the people that I talk to have multiple things, and
mm-hmm,
that's something I'm discovering because I'm not. I've been writing since I was a kid. I've always been a writer. I have no musical talent. I've tried painting. I've tried all these things, and it comes down to I thought that was the normal thing. That I was finding people that did a couple things that they
mm-hmm,
loved and were good at, and I'm like, you know, this is the rarity. But I'm finding that actually that's not the case. One of I talked to a guy who owns a coffee roaster, and
mm-hmm,
they do a he's got like so many different things that we listed on his thing. The episode title is huge. He's a distiller and a musician, all kinds of stuff. And when I'm talking to him, one of the things I like to ask, which we're going to get to in a minute, is um, if you had no worry about money or time or
mm-hmm.
anything, what's the one thing you would do? And he said none of those things. He said he would bake bread. And I was like, that wasn't even anything that we talked about. And it just it floors me that um well we'll get into that in a little bit. Because I kind of have this, I try to steer this through different topics and stuff. So let's
Yeah,
see. um I had made no, oh, NaNoWriMo. um
mm,
I haven't done it in years, because I usually take it off. I make that my off month, so I don't do, because I'm, with full time job, and then I'm writing on the off time, and then kids,
same.
and there's just so much going on that I take November to duck out and take a break. And but back in the old days when I used to do it, in the MySpace days, I remember doing NaNoWriMo because my MySpace had custom code in it to put the NaNoWriMo badge on there.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago. But I remember when I first started not pushing myself for that time of the year, I actually like talking to other people who are doing it and coaching, and you know seeing people's progress and saying keep going, because I think everybody gets sucked into the I have a month to do this thing. That I think it helps to have some cheerleaders for stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I still try to get out there on social media every year, and just kind of support people that are working at it, because everybody's ducked down trying to run through it real quick, that they forget that
Other
we
things
all
exist.
need
Yeah.
support. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it is hard. And
Yeah. I have yet
I
to be successful at one because like I always it just
no.
like I have competing priorities,
Mhm.
and half the time by the time I get to NaNoWriMo, by the time I get to November, I'm doing revisions on something. I'm not drafting. So
Yeah.
like my schedule just doesn't match up with it.
No, and I don't like the pressure. I'm
Mm.
the more I feel like I have to rush, the more I think I suffer for it, because um I don't like the stress of
Yeah.
feeling like, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a deadline to me. Like deadlines I can handle, but it feels like
It feels like an arbitrary race.
it does. It does. And
Yeah.
I recently we have this new Substack explosion. Everybody's going to a Substack and they're looking for
Yeah.
fiction writers because everybody's doing journalism. And it's happened to me 3 times. It happened to me with WordPress when it was new. Oh, I can subvert the system that when a traditional publish is my dream. So, but WordPress subverts all those systems that are in my way. So I'm going to do that. And then, it becomes, this isn't really what I want. It happened again with when the self publishing boom and,
Yeah.
ebooks. And then, I made it. I have this is hosted. The podcast version of this is hosted on Substack because they have a podcast hosting thing.
Mm.
So I ended up making a Substack for what's to come. I'm just going to start putting stuff here, but then I'm ignoring the fact that I'm going to need editing, professional editing. I'm ignoring the fact that this. I'm asking people to pay a subscription fee for being beta readers, and I was also like giving these expectations based on my excitement, and I was
Mm.
giving myself an arbitrary expectation, and I finally just said I'm not doing this. I still have a goal because
Yeah.
you work on something for so long. You want
Yes.
it to be seen and you want it to be out there, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of things in the way, and sometimes you, you just want to find a easier route, but it's
Yeah.
not the right route.
Well, and I kind of have the opposite issue in that, like, I really don't want to self-publish because, like, I've met me and I know how I am, and I
I
don't want to
don't.
do all that marketing and all
Nope.
that stuff, and I don't want to take the risk on all of it myself.
Yep.
And I'm really glad that I didn't, like back in like 2019 when I first started querying that manuscript, people were like, "Oh, you should just self-publish this. Why are you doing?" First of all, if I had self-published then, I would have like it would have been this like bloated piece of crap that nobody would have wanted to read because it was too long. There was
Hmm.
like the story structure was all like I've been, I just shelved it because I'm still looking at it going, you know what? I like now knowing what I know, what is it, 4 years later, after like all the stuff that I've learned in the last 4 years, it's like every time I would start to query it, I would learn something else that made me go, oh, no, it needs another revision because
Hmm.
I need to implement XYZ thing that I just learned. And so finally, like this time, I'm just like, you know what? I have an idea for another story that I'm really excited about. I need to just go ahead and write that story.
Yep.
And I'm just going to, like, I've kind of made notes about like what I think would fix this book, but it's one of those things where if I get an agent call and they're like, "What else do you have?" I can be like, "I have all these manuscripts that I've sort of worked on. That they just need to be like fixed." And
Let me show you my trunk full of stories.
exactly, here's my
Yep.
trunk full of goodies
Yep.
that are not great right now,
Hmm.
but like because like I basically used that manuscript to learn how to write.
Hmm.
But, like, at every step along the way, somebody was like, "You should just self-publish it. You should just self-publish it." And I'm like, "No, because I wanna know that what I'm putting out is good enough that,
Hmm.
like, even if I get to the point where, like, I got an agent and it went out on sub and died, at least it's something that somebody believed in enough
Hmm.
that they were willing to take it to a publisher and say, "I think this is good."
Yep.
Like it because I especially coming off of the career change, the getting burned out, because
Hmm.
like burnout is failure. Like it feels the same as failing.
It does. It does.
and so coming off of that, it took me a long time to get to the point where I could show anyone my writing and be like,
Hmm.
you know, is this even something that I should try to keep doing? And if it hadn't been for the people who said yes back then, I wouldn't be doing it now.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. There's a. I think a lot of people don't understand that the the act of writing is only a small part of the science. I
mm,
mean, it is a very mechanical
yes.
process to know that it's not just you can't just fill a thing with a bunch of things. There
Mm,
are rules and there are ways that you can and can't do things, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of understanding of voice and process, And I think that's where a lot of people go, well, that's dumb. I'm just gonna,
Right.
and
Well,
that's it takes away from your you. One of the things that I like to talk about on here is imposter syndrome, because
mm,
I get it really bad.
mm,
And I think that one of the things that we're told a lot when you're learning how to become a writer or trying to step into it is, um, fake it till you make it, and you have to believe in what you're working on. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more gray area in there, because the
mm,
fake it till you make it is you're setting yourself up for disappointment if
yeah.
you can't admit that you're not there yet. And you do have to believe in your work, but you
Yeah.
also have to be able to know when it's not working. And
Yeah, well, and you also have to know the rules. So, like, one of the things that I get pushed back on a lot is like, well, like the people end up breaking the rules and blah blah blah. But I'm like, yeah, but they know what the rules are and they
mhm,
understand why they're there, and then they're making an intentional choice to break a
to
rule.
subvert them, yeah.
Yeah, but which is entirely different than not knowing that there is a rule.
Yep, correct. Yes. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
There's something on my website, my landing page on my website, that what you were talking about reminded me of. There was one day I was waiting for dinner to arrive, and I wrote like the stages of learning to write.
Hmm.
And it's basically, it goes from I wrote a thing, it's the best story ever, I bet I can
Hmm.
sell it, to like, wait,
Hmm.
what is all of this, like the like number five is, this is dumb, rules are dumb, rating is dumb, whose stupid idea was this anyway?
Yep.
And then it's just like all these different phases that we go through as we're like learning how to write, and then finally you're like, okay, fine, I understand the rules, I'm breaking them for a reason.
Yep.
Like, it's, you can't stop me.
When when I was younger, I talked to people about it,
Yeah.
and I think as I've gotten older, I don't really talk to, like, close friends except for a handful, a few, about it, because it it always devolves into a, um, I've been doing this since I was 11,
Mm,
and it I can run into somebody that I haven't seen in years, or I can talk to somebody that I haven't talked to in years, and there's always that, you still working on that writing thing, like, it has never been a hobby for me,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
without work product, without being able to point, at a shelf or at a work that somebody can obtain, it's hard to convince people that, um, you have to define failure and success yourself,
Hmm.
because especially people that are not invested in a creative art of any kind for themselves, or writing for that matter, it's hard to explain to them that most of the time that you're failing at it, especially writing, because you spend as much time on a thing as it needs,
Yeah.
and that means that most of your time growing and learning and writing is spent failing.
Hmm.
That's spent being told no for a long time in order to learn how to get to the yes. And I
Yes.
think that a lot of people don't see that. They just see that, well, why are you still doing this, if, cuz I when I turned 40, that was the first year
Mm.
that I'd been alive more years than I had rejections in my name. And that was exciting, but also depressing. And it's like, why are you still doing this? And
Yeah.
it's because I'm going to do it until I get the yes. Otherwise, what have I? What am I if I
Yeah,
don't have
what
it?
have I been spending all this time honing this for?
Yep.
And I will say, one of the things that I'm really glad about the Mentee mentor program, that was one of the things that I got out of it, was that, like, I am good enough.
Hmm.
I am a good writer. I am, I just have to keep, my mentor was like, you're about to level up. Like I can sense from like what you've told me and where you're at with everything and the quality of your writing, you're about to level up. And
Yeah.
like if she hadn't been able to say that to me, I don't think I would still be doing it because
Yep.
it's exhausting. It's exhausting
Yeah.
to, rewrite the same novel over
Yeah.
and over again
Yeah.
too many times.
I'm on my fifth draft of a
Mhm,
hundred and what's it was 160,000
mhm.
words. It's 120 now. I'm trying to trim it down, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
and that's the other thing. Like, I don't think that that is not an understood concept from a lot of people on the
mhm,
outside. Like, the amount of time you spend making something this big and then having to whittle it down to half the size into something that you're still proud of. Like, you can get halfway through that process and quit. Like, I've
mhm,
quit on novels because I've had to move on.
yeah,
I've had to be able to say, well, the 3 years I've spent on this are haven't been spent well enough to make this worthy, so I have to move on to something else. And
yeah,
I
yeah, and
think
that's yeah,
it to me it sucks. Like, depression, or not depression. I mean,
yeah,
depression comes with
yeah,
rejection, but rejection is like extremely hard to explain to somebody who hasn't had somebody say no to something that
mhm,
you've written. Like, it is one of the worst demoralizing feelings. And I think that after your first one, if you keep going, you're going to stop for a while or whatever. But I think that when you get an answer like that, the first real answer I ever got to rejection letter was a Asimov's rejection
yeah,
letter, and it hurt because I went top tier, first submission, top tier, years and years ago,
mhm, yeah, and
and
that it is,
it hurt. It was like
yeah, it
I knew it, my dream, and you
well,
know
and that's just so, and like the fact that like there's no real like actionable feedback in those rejections. That's
mm-mm,
the thing that really makes it difficult because like, and I mean I hate to be like this, but like the stuff that I did in theater when I was a costume designer, like I was really good at all that stuff. Like
mm-hmm,
I was really good at it and I was really good at it sort of naturally.
mm-hmm,
It wasn't something that I had to work really hard to learn or to like figure out how to do it. I had an affinity for it. And so like I picked up things really quickly and I ran with it. Writing is not like that.
mm-mm,
Writing is like, I was like holed up in my own little like world for a really long time doing this. And then I finally started going, I'm really fortunate in that I have friends who are professional writers. So I had people that I could go to and say, please look at this and tell me whether or not it's worth continuing keeping going.
yeah.
And I was fortunate, like they gave me good feedback, um, and encouragement and all that stuff. But like, I did not know how very much I did not know at that point.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
extremely mechanical
and
process.
it's been brutal. It's been brutal to learn all of that. And I've experienced more rejection in the last 4 years learning to do this
Yeah.
than like all the years previously, like in the costume career, just because it's not the thing that I was just naturally able to do.
And the
Um,
difference in feedback is, I think, a big deal because for a lot of
mm,
people, because you're when you're doing something with like theater or
mm,
music or something, you as you're doing it, you're getting feedback. You're getting
mhm,
somebody's telling you, well, not this way, do it this way, do it this way. But
mhm.
when you're writing, the long stretch, the majority of the work is done without feedback.
Yep.
So the when you get to that point for feedback, it's either, do I want to continue doing this and start over, or
Mm,
take all these steps back, or do I just want to try something else? And I think
yeah.
that the difference between the active feedback and the after the fact feedback make a huge difference in how you learn that. And it is extremely intricate, and you don't start learning that until you have people that say, I really like, because a lot of people, I like this is a really cool story, I want to
Yeah.
know more about this, but you don't, until you get around to, like, you know motivations and all of the very small minute details of what's expected and
Yeah.
what's.
People who start talking to you about story structure and
Mhm,
beats and hitting the midpoints and the like the timing of
mhm,
everything, and like that to me was really enlightening when I started working with the Uber group, and like I learned about developmental editing. That changed everything. And one of the things that, it's interesting that you say that about like working on your own so long. One of the best things that I've learned in the last like year or so was that is the idea of I'm a pantser, so like I don't plot things out as I go. I
mhm.
like to just
I
like
don't.
free
No,
write.
I do an outline, like, about
Yeah,
after my third or fourth draft. I reverse
right.
outline. So yeah.
Well, so I decided to do futurescapes this year, and or this month,
Yep.
and I didn't want to rehash that same story that I've been rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And I had this other idea, so I had to write 10,000 words for it, and I had to have a synopsis and a query. And so I wrote like half of the 10,000 words, and then I wrote like what I thought the synopsis would be. And then I kept going back and forth between them as I finished the 10,000 words. And, took them to my critique partners and helped, had them like give me feedback on what worked and what didn't. And such an amazingly different experience doing it that way, because they're helping me
Hmm.
spot and fix things that I might not have realized until I had, a
Yeah. Get
hundred
going.
thousand words written and had written myself into a corner in some way
Hmm.
that I hadn't spotted. So, um, yeah, just the fact that like having had that experience of doing it the hard way and
Hmm.
then and then having this
Yeah.
experience now of having this tool that like I can use to sort of test drive endpoints that I want to work toward. I'm definitely going to change it. I mean, like the synopsis is it's just guideposts,
Yeah.
but it's it's really interesting how like the combination of feeling like a failure because I'm shelving this one book combined with like this positive experience of working in a new and different way
Hmm.
that led me to more success, I think, whereas leading me toward more success. Like
Yeah.
you have to have both the failure and the success to make like the full connection, I think.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, like, I always cringe when you'll see people asking writers that I follow, where do you get your ideas from? And it's always been, for me, like, I get them from sitting down and thinking really hard about something, because I've never just had something come to me. Like, I write a lot about neurodivergency,
Hmm.
um, and I take things that I know, and then I don't I have to come up with a concept, with an idea, and it's a lot of work. Like, it's not like I've ever been sitting there going, oh, I have this idea for this thing, I'm going to write it and then be done with it. And
Yeah.
because logic in writing doesn't work that way. You have to have logic, you have to have rules,
Yep.
and I think the rewrite process and the I like closing those logic holes. A lot of people have a really hard time. I don't want to change this because I like the way it works, but it doesn't work.
Right. Right.
I really enjoy finding ways to close those holes and ways to fix those things. And to me, the idea part is the hard part. And
Hmm.
my first draft is always like 10,000 word concept draft, start to finish. This is the story I want to tell, and then what are all the pieces and who are all the
Yeah.
people. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of work. And um, I I can barely, I struggle with that in third person. So again, I'm still in it. It visibly makes me like cringe thinking about trying to, like, because I've tried it, and it's hard.
Yeah.
it it's hard, and I think it's because I I don't I don't know what I'm thinking at any given moment, and I think you have to be able to think about how you feel in a moment of everything, and
Yeah,
it's terrifying to me.
but I like it because it feels more like I'm in it.
Hmm.
And I think that some of the feedback that I've gotten from beta readers is that they didn't like being in it that much. And
I
like
don't.
they like the distance of being in
Yeah,
third person. And I'm like, well, then, but, and I started to like kind of question myself of like, am I imagining things that like first person present is a thing now? And I realized that like the books that I've enjoyed the most lately have been written in first person present, and that's probably
it's
why.
making a comeback
Yeah, that's
because
probably why my brain has been like, ooh, first person present, that's juicy.
popular fiction has like pushed against it for so long that people got in the habit of not doing it.
Mm,
And there's been, with self-publishing and indie, especially I think with indie publishers are always looking
mm,
for something new. And I think you have this boom of people trying it again and people reading it and going, this is a much different experience. Like I like reading it, but at the
yeah.
same time I find myself pushing off of it a lot. There's a I don't know if you know who Susanna Clark is. She wrote Jonathan
Sorry, who?
Strange. Susanna Clark. She wrote
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
Hmm.
Her second book, Piranesi, was one of my favorite books of like the last 5 years, and it's it's first person, and
Hmm.
it was really. It's the first time that I've read a first person book where I didn't want to escape it because it gave me anxiety. And
Yeah.
it every time I read it, I'm like, I want to try this, and then I try it, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna let y'all do that. I'm gonna let y'all can.
Yeah, some people like the distance. It was funny though because I did a critique of somebody else's writing the other day, and they were writing sort of like more in a fairy tale style that was very distant. Like there was a
Hmm.
whole lot of distance between the reader and the action,
Yeah,
and and that like made me crazy because I was like, no, I want to be there. I want to be in
yeah,
it. Get me closer.
yeah. To me, it feels like I have less control too because
Mm,
I think when you change the perspective like that, it becomes
mm,
a third person gives you a lot of omnipotency over everything or limited omnipotency over everything, and you can move around a bit more and you can fill in more
yeah.
space. And I have a hard time with the this person only knows this much at this given time, and I can't explain any of the things that I want to explain. Like,
Yeah, I have had to like rethink whose point of view I was telling a piece of information from because like I started to write something a chapter one time and I was like, wait, if I write it from this person's perspective, like they already know all the things. They're just gonna be like, well, this is it's gonna just tell too much information. So I had to
yeah,
change it to a different character's point of view because like somebody who didn't know what was going on, so there would
yeah.
some mystery would remain. Yeah.
Most of my rewrites are cleaning up info dumps, and my mask just fell. That's cool. Oh, my dog's freaking out too. It's okay. It's okay. It fell right on you, huh? It's a face. You're okay. Um, yeah, most
Miraculously,
of
my dog is actually asleep right now. So,
yeah, she was. Usually she's squeaking her toys when I'm talking to people, so it's okay. You go under the desk. Um, yeah, so I guess that okay. Let me look at my okay. So I like to talk about success versus dreams. Some people have the same. They view the dream as in the best possible outcome for you as a writer,
mm,
versus what you would define as success as a writer. And some people actually those two things are the same. And like I see the dream as a writer as um, you know what you think, what everybody thinks of as successful writers, TV and
Yeah.
selling copies and never having to worry again. You could write one book and live for the rest of your life off of it. But
Right.
the success to me is more comfortable because that idea scares me. So the dream is that, but I think because that's what I've been taught. Success to me is being able to write for a living and not have to do other things. If I could take my
Yeah.
9 to 5 schedule and instead of doing somebody else's work all day, I can 9 to 5 do my work
Hmm.
and make a living off of it. I would take, just just to not have to harm a family ecosystem by staying at home every day and
Yeah.
writing. And to me that's success. It seems to vary between people.
Hmm.
And I think that as artists we're so entrenched in our own idea of what we're looking for or what we want that we don't often see what other people want. So I like to get other people's idea of what they define as the dream and the success, and if they're the same or how are they different if not.
Yeah. So for me, like the dream would be Neil Gaiman. I mean, like
Yeah.
being able to like go and produce and do all the things and be the showrunner because like I'm a control freak on top of
Yeah.
everything else, and I actually have a costume, and theater background, so
Yeah.
I actually kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to like things in a way that a lot of writers don't.
Yeah.
If like I did get something optioned, like I actually know what I'm talking about on the technical side. So like to me that would be a great, like that would actually get me back into it in a way that that my current life just doesn't allow for. Um but like
Neil Gaiman is pinnacle, I think,
I
because
mean
he
I mean who doesn't want to be Neil Gaiman, right?
I'm in Texas, and he's got 7 books on the banned book list in school districts here, and that
Yeah.
is an achievement as far as I'm concerned.
Yes,
So
exactly. That I again, like,
American Gods is like one of my
yeah.
number 1 books of all time. So
Well, I'm a huge Terry Pratchett fan,
yes,
and
good
so like
omens
I actually got into Neil Gaiman through Terry
through
Pratchett and
Terry
Good
Pratchett.
Omens, and so like the whole Good Omens thing, like the oh man, I
Yeah,
just love what they've done with that, and if I could like create the worlds that are inside my head like that way, that obviously would be amazing, and
yeah.
like it would give me an opportunity to travel and go and do and experience things I haven't gotten to experience and all that stuff, and have the financial ability to do that without like stressing about it.
He
um
One of the things I like about Gaiman is he's really good at saying a lot without a lot,
mhm.
except that when he needs to. He's really good at finding a balance between,
Yeah.
sometimes exposition is necessary. And
Yes.
he is really, really good at balancing that. Like a
Yeah.
lot of times he'll say very little, but get a lot across. And
Yeah.
it's
it
a
was
hard thing to learn.
it's funny though because like I'm much more of a fan of like British style writing that's
Hmm.
more complex and flowery,
Yep.
whereas he's actually more American in the way that he writes and like the
Hmm.
short sentences and more concise. So it's a really interesting combo. But
Yeah. One of
as
my
far as
Oh, sorry.
oh,
I
I
was
was
just
just
gonna say. Oh, sorry. One of my criticisms that I get a lot is I'm actually when in college I studied classic literature and mythology and oral storytelling, pre-written
yeah.
language, and so I prefer the more complex ways of doing things.
Mhm.
But when you write genre fiction, they're
You
like
have to
this isn't
simplify.
this isn't
Yeah.
this isn't how you write in genre fiction, and
Yeah.
it drives me crazy because
Yeah.
um, I just I read Rebecca uh,
Mm.
a while back, and it is just what that it's not even about the story for most of that
Mm.
book. It's just about how crazy these sentence structures are and
Yeah.
how beautiful these words are, and that's great to me. Like Shirley Jackson is one of my favorite all-time writers, and but in there, they have that. You can't do that. You
Yeah, they
can't do
had
that
that
in space,
luxury.
man.
Well, and like one of my friends is a professional writer, and when I gave her my first thing to look at way back, like one of the things she did was highlight a bunch of my long sentences. She was like, "There are 50 words in this sentence," and
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah." um,
I had a
but
professor with a purple highlighter that would
yeah,
highlight purple language in the purple
yes.
highlighter. Just you don't need all these words to say that.
Yeah,
You really
yeah.
don't.
Every now and then I still sneak in a long one, but like I
Yeah.
do try to simplify now.
Yeah.
But as far as success goes, I mean, if I could make enough money to pay off my student loans
Hmm.
and my mortgage,
Yeah. Me too.
I would be ecstatic. Just
Yep.
because like I wouldn't have to work as hard or as long to
Hmm.
like have the same things that I have now, and it would free up a lot of mental energy, which I have to say is one of like the big things about like burnout was that like I was spending so much mental energy just trying to figure out how to survive
Hmm.
and like pay my bills and all that stuff that like I didn't have any creativity left over. The stuff that I was putting on stage was not great art. It was
Yep.
getting stuff done and making people not be naked on stage.
Yep. Or not
So
getting yelled at, or
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like yeah. So
Yeah. It. One of the things that always strikes me is I always think of if I could get this finished and get querying and then I could you know make a living. If I could make a living, that's always where I go
mhm,
while I'm working. But the one thing that I always notice is every time I walk in a bookstore, the only thing I can think about is how great it would be to just see my name on something on a shelf. It doesn't have to be
oh
out
yeah.
front. Just seeing that it's there and knowing that it's there. I
Yes.
think to me that is comfort. That's comforting. That would make me
Mhm,
happy. And
yeah.
I I I feel like I get caught up in the I'm writing right now. This is my goal. This is what I want. But really, to me, I would consider that a success if I could go through, traditional publishing process, make it all the
Mhm.
way through all those hurdles and hoops, and then have
And
that as
then
an outcome. Yeah, that would
yeah,
be
go to
great.
the local bookstore and see my book on a shelf. That
Yep,
would
that would
I
do it
can
for me.
guarantee I would cry.
I definitely absolutely would. Yep.
Guaranteed tears.
Yep. Um, so imposter syndrome.
Yes.
This is more conversation I have for me. Um, I like to find out how other people deal with it because I get it and
Hmm.
I just write it out till it's done until the itch to write overwhelms me. I don't have an out for that. It especially starts affecting me the closer I get, the more positive I feel about what I'm working on, and the closer I get to finishing it. Or like say I get a few drafts in through a certain part of this thing, and I'm feeling like I might have the thing that I
Hmm.
want it to be. Then it starts creeping up on me. To me, my imposter syndrome is self sabotaging.
Yeah.
So I don't
I
know.
I
Not everybody gets it either.
yeah, no, I think that I don't have imposter syndrome as much as I have moments where it just feels like it's not that my writing isn't good or that it's not good enough. It's that the publishing industry is so fucked up
Mm.
that like it may be more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah,
Like I have that thought more than I have like I'm not good enough.
yeah.
Um,
That gets me too because that's when the Substacks and the WordPresses and the
yeah,
self publishing creep up on me is because I I'm getting older and I don't want to spend the time on
right.
these
Well,
obstacles.
and but that's also sort of what I keep telling myself is that like if I get this manuscript to the point where I can query it and I don't get any hits, if I don't get any bites, nothing happens with it, I can always self-publish it.
Hmm.
And like I like that's the same with all of the other manuscripts that I have. If I ever get them to a point where I feel proud of them and I feel like they're good enough,
Hmm.
which I don't yet
Yeah.
on the ones that I'm shelving.
Yeah.
If I got that to the point where I thought it was good enough, I would just self-publish it if I couldn't get an agent in traditional publishing, just to like get it out there. In fact, my brother actually is a writer too. He's been writing much longer than I have, but he had some issues with with, I think it was his second wife. Um, was really jealous of the time that he spent on stuff like that, and
Hmm.
kind of made him feel like he wasn't good enough. And I I told I gave him a self-publishing book for Christmas because I was like, I want you to like get your words out there. Like
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time and energy on them, and maybe querying and all of that stuff is too much for you, but like you could at least put your words out there.
Yeah.
Um because it is a perfectly valid path. It's just not the path that I want to go down because of all the
Correct.
risk
Yep.
involved. And
Yeah, I usually disclaimer that, but I didn't this time. Usually when I
yeah,
start talking about self-publishing, because I don't want people to think that I'm
yeah. I
criticizing.
mean,
But
there are some genres that traditional publishing just doesn't even touch,
hmm.
and or they just barely touch it, or there's just very little chance that you're actually going to get in through that
Yeah.
door. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly valid thing, but the stuff that I write, traditional publishing handles. And I would much rather have a 5,000, even if like a $5,000 advance would
Hmm.
be more than I would think I would probably end up earning from self-publishing a book,
Yep.
just because I don't want to have to do all the freaking marketing and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that goes with it. So that to me would be success in some ways. It's just you know getting it out there, if all else fails.
Yeah. So the still you would consider that successful if
Yeah.
people are, to me, I think that you can have a story
Mm.
done, but it's not a story until somebody experiences it.
Yeah.
Like to me, and I think that I have a bunch of stuff that sits there. Like I have a trunk full of stories, and
Mm.
I every now and then I go back and start planning them into a novella, into a novel, or
Yeah.
rewriting stuff, and um, it sucks to have so much stuff behind you, but the stuff that's behind you helps you with the stuff in front of you. We learn from
Yeah, I wouldn't
those
be able to
things.
do what I do now if I hadn't gone through all that learning experience.
Hmm.
It's like people who get jealous of old boyfriends and girlfriends, and I just like that doesn't make any sense to me, because
Hmm.
like if it wasn't for those people, the person that you're dating wouldn't be the person that they are. So
Yep.
like thank them.
Yep. Yeah. People learned. They learned from
Yeah.
previous experience what they do and do not want as a writer, as a reader, as a
Yep.
partner. Yep.
Yep.
Um, so uh, I I had this question initially. This question I usually was asking. What is it that you wish people had talked more about when you were trying to get into this? But it kind of morphed into a less, I guess, cliche question. So, as artists, we get a lot of unwarranted feedback. We get a lot of people who are always trying to tell you what you should do with your thing,
Mm.
and um, so I kind of came up with this different way of asking this question. So, if if you had to risk coming off as an asshole to somebody to give them unwarranted, they don't want advice.
Mm.
So if if what is some unwarranted advice that you would give to somebody who is earlier on in their journey that you would risk coming off as an asshole to give to them, whether they wanted it or not?
Um Your writing probably isn't as good as you think it is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
And your
that's mine.
story your
That's mine
story
too. Yeah.
probably isn't as good as you think it is.
Yeah.
Um Honestly, I mean that's half of the feedback that I do give. It's still
Yeah.
in critiques is, like I think that the most the biggest disservice you can do to someone who's learning to write is only give them praise.
Yep.
I think you have to give praise because like it's absolutely necessary to build people up and
Hmm.
say you are doing X, Y, and Z really, really well. Good job. Like you could even that could stand some improvement in, whatever areas, but considering where everything else is at, these things that you're doing are great.
Hmm.
But in these areas you could stand a like there was a manuscript that I kind of have a rule at this point when I'm beta reading. If I find myself making inline comments, I stop at 50 pages in,
Hmm.
and I do a an edit letter based on that first 50 pages because no agent is going to give you more than 50 pages
No.
to impress them.
No.
And so if I'm getting caught up in doing inline comments and I'm not in the story enough to like just respond to the story on a story level instead of a line level,
Hmm.
then it's not there yet.
No. And
And
that's what stories need. They need other
yeah,
eyes to be able to say honestly,
yeah,
this isn't ready, because you don't want to put it out there when it's not ready, because that's what
yeah,
happens. That
yeah,
you're not pulling somebody in with that 50 pages.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I mean I do try not to be a complete bitch about it when I say
Yeah.
it, but like I'm just honest and I say, look, I when I'm doing inline comments like this, that means it's not ready, and I stop at 50 pages. If you want to send me a synopsis, I can help you look at the storyline, like the full
Hmm.
arc and everything. And I, offer that assistance from like, the high level
Yeah.
without reading all 100,000 words.
Yeah.
Because that's it. It's like most of the time, these are not 60,000 word stories. These are 100,000 word stories.
Yeah.
And because we write genre, and yeah, so I think it's kind of funny because you couch that question as like if you had the ability to, I'm like, oh dude, I already do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I've come to realize about myself is that like I'm one of like it feels like maybe like 1 in 20 people is actually capable of being confrontational and saying things that like you know other people wouldn't say, and
Hmm.
apparently I have that gene.
Yeah. Yeah. Honest critiques and are the best medicine. And I think that's another one of those points where somebody finds out if they're a writer or not. Because
Yeah.
if you get through it only takes like two or three people to look
Mm.
at a thing and say this isn't ready, it's not done like you think it is.
Yes.
That's a moment where they can either decide I really believe in this and I want to make it better,
Yeah.
versus I'm not going to do this anymore. This is
Yeah.
too much. And
Yeah.
I think that what a lot of people don't understand is that you can have any story is fixable. Any story is sellable. You just have to be willing to take the time and the revision to
Hmm.
make it what it needs to be. And I think a lot of people drop the ball there, because it doesn't mean that your story's bad. It just means that it needs to be told better.
Right.
And
Right.
that took me a long time to learn. Like, I told this story before on one of my earlier episodes, that when I was 12 or 13, I typed up a script for an X-Files episode, and I mailed it to some address for some Fox studio, in a puffy envelope. And I always wondered, what happened to that. But because that's what I thought. That's what I thought you did. And
Hmm.
um, it took um, a middle school English lit class
Hmm.
to give a writing prompt for me to write and then somebody to say, hand me it back with all this red ink on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you see all that red ink for the first time, you see somebody telling you this is terribly written, but at the same time they're telling you this is a good story.
Right.
That's what it took. It took somebody, because a lot of times people either tell you it's a good story or they'll tell you this is terribly written, and it took a middle school English teacher to say this is a really good story. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be better written because it's terribly written, but you're a good
Right.
writer. You're a good storyteller. And because I'm a terrible writer, but I love telling stories. And I think that it's important to tell people that,
Mm-hmm.
it's not any story can be good,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's your story.
Well, and I think it's important to make any feedback that you give actionable. So
Yeah,
like just telling somebody it's a terribly written story, that's not helpful because
no.
like what about it is terrible? Like what about it doesn't work? Because you can chase all kinds of things down. And I feel like the last 4 years of my life have been like chasing down like one thing after another
Hmm.
as people pointed them out to me, and I'm like, I really wish that somebody had just like gone through my first manuscript and been like, this is filtering, don't do that, it got
Hmm.
creates distance, this is head hopping, you're showing something from another person's point of view that that person can't
Yep.
know. Like you just like detailed all of like those rookie mistakes that people make so that I could get those cleared out and focus on like the other more artistic parts
Yep.
of the mechanics of writing.
And it's a
Because
lot of a lot of things that people don't realize are things that are problems,
mm-hmm,
because
yeah,
they are problems, and you can't always catch that stuff reading your own, because
mm-hmm,
you know everything. And so
yeah,
you can't always catch when your characters don't know something, or when
yeah,
they're not thinking correctly, or you've rewritten the same. Like I'm really bad, like I get a line or two in my head that I really like, and I write it, and then I forget that I wrote it, and I write it in like three or four other places. And I mean,
I do
I'm
that too.
I'm an editor's, like, financial resource. Like I know that I need editors. Like
Yeah,
I'm bad. and
yeah,
and the I think a lot of people don't. To me, if somebody is able to give you that, like
mm-hmm,
if somebody's able to say these are all the things that need to be fixed, if they're not, if the more detailed the feedback, I feel like,
mm-hmm.
is the more complimentary,
Yes,
because they're
yes,
they're looking at it deep enough to see all the problems, but they can also see how valuable
mm-hmm,
the overall work is, that they're able to say these things, if you fix these things, it increases the value of this work.
yeah. Well, and one of the other things that I would tell people is to make sure that they critique other people's work as much as they're getting their own.
Hmm.
Because, like, it is so much easier to see stuff in things that you did not write
Hmm.
because,
It
like,
is.
you don't have that emotional attachment to it.
Hmm.
You don't have the words already in your head, like the way that you think that they should sound. You're actually parsing the words instead of like remembering what you wrote.
Yep.
And so, like, the best way to learn how to spot all that stuff is to critique other people's work. And it takes a lot of time. Sometimes I feel like I spend more time critiquing than I read writing, but
Yeah.
like it's taught me a lot. So
Yeah. So, if I think this is probably my longest. It's kind of cool. This kind of just these are, as I do these more and more, I'm learning how to make them more conversational instead of just,
yeah,
because I hear more about other people's stories and stuff, and
yeah,
I started this, as actually as a form of therapy, and it actually grew into something that I hated initially, because it was like a homework assignment. Can you
yeah.
be on the internet? Can you talk to strangers? And it turned out to be something, because I'm talking to, like-minded individuals. Like, one of
Hmm.
the things that I keep looking for is, I want to talk to, like, a dancer, like a classic ballerina dancer or something, because I,
Hmm.
I want to know all the things. Like, I want to know, like, the amount of criticism that probably goes into a art form like that has got to be insane. And I
Hmm.
really like, I keep trying to reach out to, I have a wish list of people that I reach out to periodically to see if they'll talk to me, but I actually end up enjoying just talking to just people who are doing art, because it
Yeah.
can be anybody. You can go to the grocery store and there's somebody who is a musician who's just
Hmm.
working and they're trying to find room for it. And I think it's a better conversation to say, out of the 5 people that you follow on social media that are living off their art, there's hundreds and hundreds who are trying to make inroads in there. And
Hmm.
there's industries, publishers, and there's industries that are missing out on people's voices because in the internet age, they're closing off to protect themselves from risk.
Yep.
And it's one of the things that I think I understand publishers, staying in safe spaces where they know their writers and they know their publishers, and
Yeah.
closing it off to protect themselves from risk. But at the same time, that they're losing the the potential discoveries that come along with that risk.
Right.
So the if you had to pick one moment of, it doesn't have to be like failure that ended something, more like one moment that felt the worst, like felt like the biggest failure you've ever had,
Mm.
but ended up being a blessing, ended up being down the road in hindsight to be a much better situation than you thought.
Oh, hands down, getting laid off from my last main theater job.
Yep.
Because I had been thinking about going full time freelance and was planning on doing at least one more season as a full time employee to like save up money and stuff, and build up more freelance clientele. Uh, but I ended up getting laid off instead, and it just pushed me to like go ahead and go for full time freelance. Um, and I mean, obviously, that ended up like not working out in the long run, but it was one less year that I was in a career that was killing me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I, you know, it's really hard to, like you said, it's really hard to let go of
Mm-hmm.
something when you started doing it because you loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to tell when you've gone from loving something to hating it.
Because you still
And
want to love it.
because you still want to love it. You just,
Mm-hmm.
well, and I kept thinking, like, if I can just get over this next hump, if I can
Mm-hmm.
just get around this next corner, if I can just get past this next roadblock, everything will be great.
Yep.
It'll be what I wanted it to be. And I just like it never got there. And it's really hard to let go of that kind of ugh,
Yeah.
something that you worked so hard for, and put so much
Investment.
investment,
It's an
time
investment.
and energy, and the choices that you make along the way in
The things
you
that you
know
sacrifice. We
the
we
things you
sacrifice a lot for our art a lot of the time.
yes, yeah,
And like,
made a lot of sacrifices, and the thing about working in the arts is that the pay is such shit that it's
mm-hmm.
really hard. Like, you end up with a lot of sunk cost
Mm-hmm.
and not a lot of ability to uh, climb out of whatever hole you're in.
Yep.
So like you end up in a lot of debt,
Yes.
and um, and no way to pay off that debt because you're making jack shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and there, I mean, there's people who are published authors that
Mm.
work regular full time jobs or have secondary jobs that they work because
Exactly. Yeah.
they can't they can't make a living, and that's something that I've had to over the last couple years have to plan for is my success dependent on can I live off of this, or is my success dependent on I did a thing and people are reading it? Because
Yeah.
I might not be able to live off of it, but I can still do it and people care about it. So
At this point, I feel like it's gonna like if I make any money off of it, it'll be a supplement to my retirement.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, pay off all these things, and maybe I'll
yeah,
be able to work less so that I can do this more because I
yeah,
won't have as many bills. Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Okay. So we're almost at an hour and a half. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my little
Hmm.
outro thing, and then I'll come back to you here in a minute
All
or
right.
two. Okay. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for all the things that I normally say thank you for. It has been a great conversation. As I've said before, I have an easier time with other writers than I do other artists because our brains kind of work the same. So, as always, if you find anything of value here, you can grab her QR code out of the top and go support her at all her places. Find me at all my places. If you're interested in having a conversation, all of my social media, you can just send me messages and I'll get to it. I'll get to it. So thanks for coming by. Thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time. And as usual, whatever it is that you do, keep at it.